going to walk through deploying a Zscaler Private Access Private Service Edge. To get started, we're going to have a quick run through of the certificates. So certificate management is important to Zero Trust and therefore important to the Private Service Edge deployment. So in this instance, I'm using a private offline CA as my root, but invariably you'll be using Zscaler provided certificate authority and chain of trust. The chain of trust is essentially the same, but we'll walk through it in this case. So I have my root CA. This is part actually of my Active Directory, but you could also use an offline CA, so it's entirely separate from your Active Directory. And so my root CA, we have the public key. The private key stays in my Active Directory or on my offline certificate authority. And everything else here is an intermediate certificate authority that is signed by the root. So the private keys for this exist inside of Zscaler. And stored securely within our certificate management architecture. So I have an intermediate certificate here for my app connectors. Again, it's signed by the root, and this will issue the certificates for the app connectors as they enroll. As my client connectors authenticate, they will get a certificate issued to them, again by this intermediate up to the chain of trust through to my root CA. So the app connectors and the public service edges all validate those certificates as the client connector connects and creates its MTLS tunnels. We have machine tunnels for pre-Windows logon. Again, I'm using a separate intermediate certificate authority to issue those tokens. Chain of trust up to that. Connector certificate authority. Again, up to the root CA, and this is used for my branch connectors or my cloud connectors to do network-based forwarding. Now, when we're using isolation client or cloud browser isolation, again, we want to have a separate intermediate certificate authority that issues those certificates for those clients as they enrolled. And then I've got a certificate authority I created specifically for my private service edges. So as we enroll private service edges, they will get a certificate issued by the root, and they will be able to validate the app connectors or the clients that connect to the private service edge and validate that chain of trust all the way through end to end. It's important to understand the certificate authority, the hierarchy and the issuing process. So let's come across to the private infrastructure and we'll click on private service edges. So we're going to add a new private service edge. We're going to create a new provisioning key from scratch. And the signing certificate for that is the Private Service Edge Intermediate Signing Authority. So we'll click Next. We're going to create a new group to group things that are in a similar or the same data center. So we'll call this Milton Keynes, which is where I'm based. This is not publicly accessible. We're only going to use this on-premise, on-network, for universal ZTNA. So my client will connect to the service edge, my local app connectors will connect to the service edge, and I will get universal ZTNA on-network all through the service edge. When the when the user goes off-network, they will use the public service edge for their connectivity. Deciding whether or not we are on network is based on the client connector trusted networks, which we've defined previously in the mobile portal. So we'll say the branch and the data center. These are my two criteria. We're going to check for DNS and hostname resolution to say, okay, I am on the trusted network. Therefore, I should try and find the private service edge to be redirected to. We're not enabling this for disaster recovery. We could cover that in a separate session on how disaster recovery works. Alternative cloud domains are used for things like where there's SNI inspection, maybe in China. We're not considering that for this at this point. So I just need to come in here and I have to give it a location, Milton Keynes. Again, this is so that our redirection and all of the logging happens as expected. So we click Next. We give the provisioning key a name, so we'll call it Milton Keynes. We're going to give it one use. We only want to enroll this once, and I'd have to increase this number. Again, that's for security because I'm recording this, and provisioning key should be seen as client credentials. So click Save, and I'll copy this provisioning key to my clipboard. I can then go off and read the documentation. From the documentation, this will tell you where you should download the VM from. We're going to deploy on ESXi, and it gives us the URL to download the OVA from. So we read all this documentation. Of course, it's important to make sure it's relevant for your deployment and your data center. So we see that the provisioning key was created there. I can come across to my ESXi and I can now register the VM. So I'm going to upload a new OVA, click Next. We're going to call it WG Private Service Edge. And we're going to drag and drop the file that I downloaded previously into the folder. We click Next. We click Next. I want to deploy it on my VM network, none of my other networks. We click Next and we click Finish, and it'll go off and deploy. We'll see it upload in the file here. It's about 2 gig file to be uploaded, so it'll take a couple of seconds to download. It'll take a couple of seconds to upload. So once it's deployed, come into our virtual machines, we can see the private service edge here, 20%. Whilst that is downloading, what we'll do is we'll just jump into the Client Connector portal briefly on Zscaler 2. And I'll just show you those trusted network criteria. So we selected data center, so it's if my DNS server is 254, or my branch DNS servers, or my office DNS servers, and it's resolving these things to these hosts. So I'm specifically on this one, so I need to make sure that office or data center is configured for my trusted network locations. So if we come into my private service edge groups, Milton Keynes, we need to make sure that I've got Office selected in there as well, because that's the one I'm on. So we click Save. Make sure that our trusted network criteria are correct. So this is at 70%. It's a bit of a large upload. Of course, if you were deploying this with vSphere or into some hyperscaler, you'd obviously replicate these. You'd create multiple groups of these as you deploy, and we'd probably be providing the provisioning key as part of an automation script to automatically deploy, push the provisioning keys into the service edge as it boots up, and it'll automatically join the cloud. But we're obviously deploying this inside of ESXi, so we're going to go through the manual process of this and show you where those files end up and how that joining process works. So this is now deployed. This should auto start. There we go. And we'll open the remote console to make it easier for us to see what's going on. Okay, so we can log in as admin. Default password is Zscaler. We'll SU to root, and we'll systemctl start SSHD. And the reason I'm starting SSHD is because I need to copy that provisioning key in, and going through the VM console doesn't allow me to do that. So we can do IP address show. And we see that the IP address for this machine is 192.168.1.75. So if I now come across to an SSH console, let me zoom in slightly here so it's easier for you to see. SSH admin at 192.168.1.71. '74. So if we SSH to 192.168.1.74, so if we SSH to 192.168.1.75, which is the private service edge, we can log in as Zscaler. We can sudo su to root, and we can cd to opt Zscaler var service edge. If we're looking here, we've got all the files. So we systemctl stop ZPA service edge. Systemctl stop ZPA service edge. We VI the provision key, and we paste that key in there, and we write and quit. And so now we can systemctl start ZPA service edge. And we'll see that the files are being created as it encrypts the provisioning key, it joins the domain, and it gets all the certificates necessary for the TLS connections for the service edge. If we come back across now to our administration console, we go to private service edges, we can see that it's booted, it's joined, we've got the IP address, and it's looking to update. So we'll update it now. We'll click update now, and that will take a short second for it to figure out what's going on. And we can go systemctl status ZPA service edge ISL, and it says it's going to restart shortly to take that that update. So, but we can systemctl restart ZPA service edge already to get all of the information that it's restarted. It's still going to look to restart in a little bit. If we refresh this, it'll slowly take that upgrade in about a couple of minutes. So Service Edge is deployed, connectivity is made, so we can go ahead now and we can start the Zscaler client connector. I'm not going to go through the authentication process for client connector. It's already enrolled in my tenant. That starts up, it says I'm in welshgeek.net, and you can see it's automatically picked up. The broker is 192.168.1.75, so the service edge that we just deployed. Internet security is already connected to the public service edge. If we click on more, we can see that it's the app policy is Welsh Geek. We've got all the information there. And if we look at this, it says it's on the trusted network because it passed all of those different trusted network criterias. Okay, so we're connected to the private service edge 192.168.1.75. So we can go ahead and we can open up a new tab. We'll connect to HTTP centos.welshgeek.net as a ZPA segment, and we'll see that we're connected to the intranet, or we could go to HTTP DC3 welshgeek.net cert serve. We're connected to the certificate server. So if we come across into private service, into Zscaler private access, and we'll go to, let's go to analytics, diagnostics. We can see that connection. We've got a load of connections here to ESX, and let's clear all our filters. And we can see those connections to the domain controller there. We've got Kerberos tickets, and it'll tell us we're coming through the service edge in Milton Keynes. We're going through the app connector that I've got in my my data center as well. We see the IP address of the app connector, and we see the information on the service edge that we went through in Milton Keynes. Flow from the client .52 through the app connector 189 to the IP 192.168.1.2, and we know that all of the traffic is flowing through the service edge here. The controlled service edge that for the application policy is our public service edge in London. So with that, we've got all the traffic flowing for Universal ZTNA through from the client, private service edge, through to the private app connector to the private application, all without traversing the internet at all.